camp now. Yes, I didn't see him. What are you looking so sad about, Jack?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. That's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting drinks of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, one time during my career, I was on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
What's happening, my people? It's Cat Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right, you know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cat Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, boxing pioneers. And how's the family today? This is the hump day edition of Cat Sports, the Boxtorian. Every now and then I like to go back and talk about the black boxing pioneers of the sport. Those fighters from the late 19th century, early 20th century. Joe Gans, George Dixon, Sam Langford, Harry Wills, Joe Jeanette, Barbados, Joe Walcott, of course, Jack Johnson, those guys. They got 10 of them today. Don't know if we're going to get to all of them, but we're going to talk about them a little today. Some of the black boxing pioneers of the sport. And we're going to talk about the colored championship. Okay. Black fighters, late 19th, early 20th centuries, weren't allowed to fight for the regular heavyweight titles. So they formed the colored title. Well, it wasn't just, we're going to focus on the colored heavyweight title today, but it was a colored title in every division. Okay? And that's what the black fighters fought for. Mike Grimm in the building. Salute Mike Grimm. But first, we're going to go into the archives and come up with an old classic fight. And again, today, we're going to dig deep into the archives for today's fighter today. So let's get started with the fight of the day today. Okay, for today's fight of the day, we have Jack Johnson versus Sam McVeigh 2. October 27th, 1903. Johnson McVeigh 2. This is a rematch of heavyweight greats. Johnson McVeigh 2. October 27th, 1903. Okay? On February 5th of 1903, Jack Johnson outpointed Denver Ed Martin to win what was referred to at that time as the black or colored heavyweight championship of the world. Then, just 3 weeks later, the Galveston Giant outpointed tough Sam McVeigh to notch his first defense of the title. Now, Johnson and McVeigh were part of a group of gifted fighters excluded from competing for the Universal Heavyweight Championship because of widespread bigotry. Johnson, McVeigh, Joe Jeanette, Harry Wills, Sam Langford, Big Bill Tate, all highly talented and all denied the opportunities they deserved because they happened not be white. Of course, Johnson would go on to become the first black heavyweight champion, but only after he chased Tommy Burns to the other side of the globe. But that's another story for another show. Okay? They chased Tommy Burns to the other side of the globe to get that title shot, and he got it. It's a young Jack Johnson right there. This was only Sam McVeigh's 7th pro fight, but McVeigh rebounded with 2 wins, including a knockout over Martin, thus setting up nicely a return with Johnson. Buoyed by the immense stoppage of a fighter Johnson had failed to defeat inside the distance, McVeigh's fans in Oxnard, California, journeyed to Los Angeles to see the scheduled 20-round tilt, but they left disappointed. Sam McVeigh was a tremendously tough and powerful battler, but Jack Johnson, 6 years older and more experienced, was a truly gifted boxer and one of the finest defensive masters the heavyweight division has ever seen. The drunk Irishman in the building. Salute to the drunk Irishman. How are you today? Subscribe to the Drunk Irishman's channel. Anybody out there listening? Your fight of the day is Jack Johnson versus Sam McVeigh 2. Okay. Appreciate you, drunk Irishman. Okay. Yeah, Jack Johnson was one of the finest defensive masters the heavyweight division has ever seen, still to this day. Okay. So, now McVeigh knew that given his disadvantages in terms of height and reach. His best chance of victory was to attack and force his way to the inside. Now, the challenger charged with fury in the opening round, hoping to ambush his man. But all he got for his troubles was a hard right hand to the chin. The punch traveled just a few inches, but it was powerful enough to award the otherwise sturdy McVeigh with the first knockdown of his career. Okay? The challenger beat the count and survived to both hear the bell and then receive a welcome dose of smelling salts once he got over to the corner. Okay? And there is Sam McVeigh, the challenger in this fight. Okay? There is Sam. All right. T-Mac 149, salute. How are you today? We're doing our little, we always dig into the archives at the beginning of every show and do a fight of the day. We went all the way back to 1903 today. Jack Johnson versus Sam McVeigh 2. This was the second fight between these two heavyweights. But salute. T-Mac 149. Good to see you today. Okay. Yeah, there's Sam McVeigh right there. Now, Sam went down in the first round, but he made it up. Okay. Now, following this, McVeigh decided that bull rushing Johnson was no longer the strategy of choice. For the next few rounds, Johnson called the tune while Sam kept a healthy distance, content to throw the occasional lead. Urged on by his corner, he picked up the pace in round 5, but his offensive efforts only allowed Johnson to demonstrate his skill at blocking and parrying. And then in round 6, a right hand put McVeigh on his backside again. Okay? Round 6, McVeigh is down for the second time. Yeah, McVeigh was a bad man, though, drunk Irishman. 100%. 100%. Appreciate you, T-Mac 149. But yeah, McVeigh was a bad man then. But now he's down for the second time. Round 6. Now, round 7 saw Sam surprise Johnson with a rare telling blow. A quick straight left to the chin that put the champion on his heels. But in the 8th, Johnson again regained control. Now, where he was well behind on points, McVeigh doubled his efforts to force his way to the inside in rounds 9 and 10, even provoking a shout from Johnson of, "See here, Sam, don't you crowd me," right? Now, the exclamation was punctuated by a volley of stiff left jabs to McVeigh's dour countenance. Yeah, Johnson said, "See here, Sam, don't you crowd me." Okay. Now, yeah, that's just like in the lead-up promotion to the fight. Yeah, they promoted fights way back in 1903. Yeah. Right? That's just in the lead-up to the fight right there. Mike Mazik. Salute, Mike. Mazik is here. The great Mike Mazik has arrived. Salute, Mike. How are you today? Fight of the day, Jack Johnson, Sam McVeigh, 1903. Now, McVeigh's already been down twice. We're about getting into the late rounds now. Now, Johnson and McVeigh would clash again. That was the first one there. Less than 6 months later, this time in San Francisco. And it was virtually a replay of their second meeting. But that was the second one. They fought a third time, okay? Now, Johnson and McVeigh would clash again in less than 6 months later, this time in San Francisco. And it was virtually a replay of their second meeting. The only difference being that in round 20, just before the final bell, Johnson scored a clean knockout, okay? First time he knocked Sam out, this time in the third fight. Now, of course, at this stage, both young pugilists were just getting started. Johnson would go on to become the world's heavyweight champion in 1908 and a legend of boxing. Now, McVeigh never had an opportunity to compete for the world title, but he still had considerable success in his own right, including many high-profile battles with Sam Langford and Joe Jeanette. His epic 1909 slugfest against Jeanette in Paris is widely regarded as one of the greatest fights of all time. And there you have it, the fight of the day. Yeah, I appreciate you, Mike Mazik. I did enjoy it. Yeah, I got a cash app for Mike like a week ago, Mike. I just checked it yesterday. So yeah, let me show some appreciation for that cash app I got from Mike Mazik. I think it was October 7th. Appreciate you, Mike Mazik. Okay, appreciate you, Mike Mazik. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some black boxing pioneers today, okay? And we're going to start off by talking about the colored heavyweight championship, okay? Because, you know, late 19th century, early 20th century, black fighters weren't allowed to fight for the regular heavyweight championship. So they formed a thing called the colored heavyweight championship, okay? And they competed for that. So let's talk about that. Okay, the World Colored Heavyweight Championship. Boxing pioneers today. And we're going to talk about the heavyweight colored championship, but they had a colored championship in all weight divisions, you know, welterweight, middleweight. Only had like the original 8 then. Might not even had all of them yet. But no juniors and supers at that time. But yeah, like some of the black murderers road fighters fought for like the colored welterweight, colored middleweight championships. But okay, let's talk about the World Colored Heavyweight Championship. Uh-oh, messed the chat up. There we go. We're back. Yeah, the birthday was nice, Mike. Well, yeah, T-Mac 149. Jack Dempsey, he said he would never fight Sam Langford. He said he knew he couldn't beat him. And you know, Sam Langford was blind in one eye, and he never fought above, like, he usually fought between like 150, 160, even when he was fighting heavyweights. But yeah, Jack Dempsey said he wasn't fighting him. You know, he said he felt he couldn't, he didn't want no part of Sam Langford. Neither did Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson fought Sam Langford before he won the heavyweight title, but once he won it, he never fought Sam Langford again. But he did beat him the first time, but he must have saw something in that fight where he didn't want any more parts of Sam Langford. But yeah, Jack Dempsey said he didn't want any part of Sam Langford. Now, the World Colored Heavyweight Championship was a boxing title for black boxers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, right? It was created because black fighters were barred from competing for the officially all-white heavyweight title. It was the only recognized heavyweight championship available to the black fighters until Jack Johnson became the first black world heavyweight champion in 1908. And then he started drawing the color bar against the other black fighters once he won it, right? Jack Johnson. Now, the colored title continued to exist until Joe Louis's reign as a universally recognized champion, right? That's when the colored championship went away all the way up into the 30s when Joe Louis came around. Now, the history of the title. Pre-Johnson era. The title served as a premier heavyweight championship for black boxers. Now, Jack Johnson's reign. After Johnson won the official world title, he relinquished the colored heavyweight title. And then in the post-Johnson era, The Colored Heavyweight Championship remained active for other black contenders to compete for, especially because a color bar prevented challenging the world champion in the decades that followed Johnson's victory. Now, decline of the title. The title gradually disappeared as an integration began to take hold in boxing, ultimately culminating in Joe Louis's reign as the undisputed champion. Now, some notable champions that held the World Colored Heavyweight Championship. Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson was the first one to ever hold the World Colored Heavyweight Championship. Peter Jackson. Jack Johnson relinquished the title after winning the World Heavyweight Championship, the regular belt. Sam Langford had it, World Colored Heavyweight Championship. A prominent and highly regarded boxer who won the title and defended it multiple times, although he was never given the chance to fight for the official world title. And George Godfrey, he won the vacant title and defended it several times. Okay, so let's talk about some of these pioneers. We're going to start out with George Dixon, Little Chocolate. That's what they called him, Little Chocolate. George Dixon. Okay. He's first. All right. T-Mac said Langford was pretty good at slipping punches on the inside. Figured that would have troubled Dempsey. Yeah. T-Mac Dempsey figured that too. But no, Jack Dempsey didn't really. I don't know, because I don't know. He didn't duck Harry Wills. You know. Jack Dempsey wanted to fight Harry Wills, but the government. Jack Dempsey wanted to fight Harry Wills, who was the number one contender, but the government stopped that because after they had the fight between Jack Johnson and Jess Willard, they had race riots, and 20 people lost their life all across the country. Over 100 was injured, and the government didn't want that to happen no more. So they told the promoters not to make any more mixed race heavyweight championship fights. And after Jack Johnson and Jess Willard, another black man didn't fight for the title until 1937, when Joe Louis fought for it and won it. You know, Joe Louis was just so good and valuable, you know, they had to let him fight for it because they saw dollar signs and stuff, you know. But George Dixon, Little Chocolate, is first. Let's get that going. Okay. That's what they called him. He was the first black athlete to win any kind of championship. Okay. In any sport. George Dixon was, not just boxing. First black athlete to be a world champion in any sport. Little Chocolate was. He was from Canada. Joe Gans was the first black American to be boxing champion. He was a lightweight, but George Dixon was Canadian. Okay. He was the first black athlete in any sport to win a title. Let's talk about him. It'll keep on. Let's get into it. Little Chocolate. Now, where are you? Okay, let me find George Dixon up here somewhere. There he is, right there. There's Little Chocolate. He's first. We're going to talk about some black boxing pioneers today. George Dixon. There we go. He's a boxing legend. Little Chocolate. Okay, here we go. Turn that light out. Okay. Now, the question is posed. Who was the first black man to win a world boxing championship? And here are the likely replies. Jack Johnson, Joe Gans. While incorrect, these answers reflect the fact that, for reasons unknown, Johnson and Gans enjoyed greater renown than the man who, in fact, first broke the color barrier in boxing more than a century ago. In fact, The first black man to be recognized as a world champion was not Johnson or Gans, but one George Dixon from Nova Scotia in Canada, a true all-time great who was better known in some circles as Little Chocolate. Okay? That was what he was known as. Born in the historic settlement of black loyalists and freed slaves near Halifax, called Campbell Road, later in Canada, later to be named Africville, Dixon first became interested in boxing when assisting a photographer who took publicity shots for various pugilists. And Dixon became fascinated with the stories he heard from various prize fighters. Soon enough, young George was stepping through the ropes himself to try his luck and see what kind of money he could make slinging leather. Now, Dixon stood 5'3" and weighed all of 87 pounds. Yes, 87 pounds when he began competing at the tender age of 16. Okay, he won his first fight in Halifax in 1886. And the following year, he left Nova Scotia for Boston, Massachusetts, hoping for glory and riches. And he found both. But it all ended up being a bit more than he could handle. Once in Boston, it didn't take long for Dixon to establish himself as a boxer of exceptional talent. Just 3 years after leaving Nova Scotia, he claimed the featherweight championship of the world. And the following year, he annexed the bantamweight title. Now, while champion, Dixon, despite the fact he was a victim of racial discrimination on numerous occasions, he gained wide recognition as one of the finest boxers in the world, bar none. Sam Austin, editor of one of the more popular boxing magazines of the time, the Police Gazette, that was like the Ring magazine of that era, the Police Gazette. And the editor of that magazine, he rated Dixon as a fighter without flaw. And in the June 27th, 1900 edition of the same magazine, there was featured a photograph captioned, "Characteristic fighting pose of the greatest pugilist in the world." No less an authority than Ned Fleischer himself, founder of the Ring magazine, described Dixon as a marvel of cleverness, fast, tricky, combative, canny, courageous, a master in every respect of the art of self-defense, a great ring general. Both Fleischer and renowned historian Charlie Rose ranked Little Chocolate as the greatest bantamweight of all time. Okay? Those are two big-time boxing historians. Ned Fleischer, the founder of Ring magazine, and the legendary Charlie Rose ranked George Dixon as the greatest bantamweight of all time, okay? And Just Do Boxing is in the building. Just Do Boxing coming up at 4 p.m. That's who I'm warming y'all up for, okay? For that balanced, unbiased boxing talk. Because everybody gets to just do boxing. Salute Just Do. Talking about some black pioneers today, right now. George Dixon, also known as Little Chocolate. Yeah, Ned Fleischer and Charlie Rose. Ned Fleischer, the founder of Ring magazine, and legendary boxing historian Charlie Rose called George Dixon the greatest bantamweight of all time. Okay, that was before. That was way back then, you know. Before a lot of the great bantamweights came along in the 50s, 60s, and all of those times, you know. I don't know why I can't come up with a name. I was thinking about the guy that was 52-0, Carlos Zarate. That was way before him and Ida Joffrey, those guys. You know, Carlos Zarate was 52-0 with 51 knockouts. Okay, but yeah, so a complete boxer, Dixon possessed excellent power in both hands and the ability to both box with technical aplomb or chase and batter his opponent into submission. His superior quickness and excellent footwork allowed him to spring at opponents like a cat behind a sharp left jab and a jarring right to the body. One of his favorite tactics was to feint an opponent out of position before rushing him to the ropes and scoring with hard body blows. That was one of his favorite tactics. Feint him out of position and then get him up against the ropes and then batter him with body blows. You know, he had power in both hands. And when he started, he was just 87 pounds. Remember? 5'3", 87 pounds. Here's another shot of Little Chocolate. Talking about some black boxing pioneers today. Okay? Now, in addition to being one of the first and finest technical boxers, Dixon is credited for a number of important innovations and for being a huge influence on many of the greats who followed, including Jack Johnson and Joe Gans. Dixon invented the common training practice of shadow boxing, right? Invented shadow boxing. And he is regarded as the first professional boxer of note to work with a punching bag suspended by a chain or rope. His understanding of the correct stance and footwork, as well as how to combine telling blows from both fists, was all ahead of his time. Okay? And he remains arguably the fight game's first true master. Yes, he does. As remarkable as Dixon's career was, his official boxing record does not accurately reflect his achievements. Now, while it gives Dixon credit for 151 fights, his manager claimed he fought more than 800 times. Okay? Now, they say the numbers wasn't accurate, but wow. He got credit. So official record gives him credit for 151, but his manager said he fought more than 800 times. Wow. If true, this would make him the most active boxer in history. Additionally, many of his official losses were no doubt the result of racial prejudice. On numerous occasions, Dixon had to contend with racist ring officials and hostile audiences. Historian Tracy Callis has stated that Dixon won nearly 90% of the draws that were on his record, right? Said he really won 90% of them. They were really wins. And also won 90% of the draws and losses on his record. This historian said he really won most of them. But due to various reasons, he did not get credit as a win. As further evidence, the September 30th, 1893 Police Gazette states that nearly every time Dixon has been pitted against a champion, no matter whether foreign or native, the majority has named Dixon the loser, probably through prejudice, owing to his color. Yet he has won. For example, his fight with the great Abe Vitelli in 1901 stands as a draw on the official records, while newspaper accounts depict the contest which Dixon clearly got the better of Vitelli. Okay? But they called it a draw. Like this one historian said 90% of his draws and losses were really wins. Okay? Yeah. This dude says that's dope. I never knew that. Okay. Yeah. Yep. 90% of his losses and draws were really wins. And that's okay. But despite such difficulties, Dixon enjoyed one of the longest and most successful championship runs in boxing history. He engaged in at least 23 world title fights, a record that remains unbroken until the reign of Joe Louis, more than 40 years later. As a result, Dixon achieved the kind of renown a little kid growing up in Nova Scotia could have only dreamed of. In fact, by the time of that showdown with Fattel, Little Chocolate was on the downside of his career. And it wasn't entirely because of the passage of time. Amazingly, Dixon had managed to maintain his hectic fight schedule and long reign while rarely resisting temptation, living the high life of a famous champion and celebrity. When George finally retired in 1906, he was an alcoholic and he died less than 3 years later. Sad as still, at the time of his death, he was penniless. It is estimated that Dixon burned through over $200,000 while living a high life on the road. And $200,000 then is millions in today's money, right? Yeah, imagine $200,000 right at the turn of the 20th century, like 1900. Millions now, probably tens of millions nowadays. Now, Dixon's life is both a tragic testament to the widespread racism of times past, as well as a cautionary tale. But transcending both is his superlative boxing skill and ring achievements. There you have it. The first black athlete to win a world title in any sport. Little Chocolate, George Dixon. Okay, so now we go to the Boston Bone Crusher, Sam Langford, the Boston Bone Crusher. Sam Langford, he fought from like lightweight to heavyweight. Average weight was like between 150 and 160. Okay. In there with Jack Johnson once. Jack Johnson won the fight, but when Jack Johnson won the heavyweight title, he would not give Sam Langford a rematch. We saw something in that other fight. Now, Sam had the colored heavyweight title, but he never got a chance to fight for the official, I call it the official heavyweight title. Okay? So let's talk about Sam, the Boston Bone Crusher. The Boston Bone Crusher, the story of Sam Langford. All right, here he is, Mr. Boston Bone Crusher. Okay, we got 10 of these pioneers, but we probably won't get to all of them. So we're going to do what we can do. The Boston Bone Crusher, the story of Sam Langford. Now, when we compare the great fighting champions of past and present, inevitably, we draw a distinction between the true warrior and the mere athlete. At that point, we realize the boxers of decades past have a clear advantage over those of recent years when it comes to deciding who is or is not a real fighter. Now, before the existence of meddling sanctioning bodies and athletic commissions, before our modern day understanding of the medical risk, before television, the best boxers really did take on all comers. The nature of the trade dictated that the best fought the best, and on a regular basis. The true champions wanted it no other way. And needless to say, times changed since then. With the advent of the sanctioning bodies and all that type of nonsense, you know, the promoters trying to, a lot of people always say the fighters focus on that O, but I really think it's more the promoters that focus on the O, you know? It's really the promoters, not the fighters. The fighters will get in there. No fighter is scared of it. Now, these guys been doing this since they were little children. They're not scared, it's the promoters. That's who's focused on these O's, not the fighters, it's the promoters, okay? In most situations. Now, so what is a real fighter? Who best fulfills the definition? There exists a plethora of possible candidates. But the epitome of a true gladiator is a prize fighter who never won a world title and whose name, outside of hardcore fight fans, has become largely forgotten. We're talking about the Boston Bone Crusher, boxing's greatest uncrowned champion, Sam Langford. He never won a world championship, never achieved great fame or fortune, never even fought for the regular heavyweight championship, but he didn't judge himself on those terms. Ultimately, all he cared about was fighting, taking on the best opponents for the sheer thrill of battle. The fact that champions of the day were afraid to face him only confirms he was ahead of his time and too good for his own good. Okay? Too good for his own good. That's exactly what Sam was. And blind in one eye. Right? Weighed 150, 160. And the heavyweights still wouldn't fight him. Okay? Still wouldn't get in there with Sam. They wouldn't do it. Okay. So let's continue. Here's the great Sam Langford. That's a drawing by the artist Damian Burton. Okay. Now, Langford was born on March 4th, 1883 in Weymouth Falls, Nova Scotia. At an early age, he struck out on his own, reportedly to escape an abusive father, in the pursuit of vagrant life, roaming the East Coast and taking work wherever he could find it. He ended up in Boston, where he got a job swabbing the floors in a local athletic club. Now, Sam became fascinated with the boxers who trained there, and it wasn't long before he started sparring with them. At the age of 15, he won a state amateur championship and promptly turned pro as a welterweight. Yeah, he was working at, like a janitor type, and he was watching the boxers spar. And once he started sparring with them, the rest was history after that. They was like, Sam, put that bucket in and mop down. And at the age of 15, he won a state amateur championship and promptly turned pro as a welterweight. Over the years, he became known as the Boston Bone Crusher, the Boston Terror, or by the racial moniker, the Boston Tar Baby. Yeah, the haters. It was, haters didn't just start now. That's what the haters called him, the Boston Tar Baby. Now, early in his career, he took on the legendary Joe Gans, aka the Old Master. We're going to get to Joe Gans too. And Gans is one of the first true greats of the prize ring. The Langford confirmed his exceptional talent and potentially dealing Gans a rare decision defeat. So no world title was on the line, okay? Gans was champion, but I don't think he put his title up there. The following year, Sam received his own true title shot against undisputed world welterweight champion Joe Walcott. Yes, pardon me. He did get a title shot, but it was at welterweight. And he won the fight, and they cheated him. It was against another the first black welterweight champion, Barbados Joe Walcott. Not Jersey Joe, Barbados Joe Walcott, okay? Sam got a title shot at welterweight against him. That was his first and only title shot he ever got. Now, the Barbados Demon. Yeah, he received his only true title shot against undisputed world welterweight champion Barbados Joe Walcott. Now, the Barbados Demon accepted Walcott's challenge, only to regret doing so. Accepted Langford's challenge, only to regret doing so. After 15 hard-fought and punishing rounds, right? Unaccountably, the fight was ruled a draw. But a number of newspaper reports indicated Langford deserved the win. The New York Illustrated News declared Lightfoot was entitled to the verdict and should have been awarded the world championship. So his only title shot he ever got, he won the fight, and they cheated it. Here he is against Harry Wills. He fought Harry Wills like 15 times. That's Lightfoot on the left, Harry Wills on the right. Yeah, they had to fight each other. Okay. Yeah, that's him and Harry Wills battling. So, Sam has started his career at welterweight, but his wide, stocky frame and long arms allowed him to develop massive back and shoulder muscle, in turn enabling him to compete in the heavier weight classes. Standing only 5'7", he often gave up huge advantages in terms of height and weight, but that never discouraged him and rarely prevented him from winning. He was happy to fight any size opponent, even though in his prime, he rarely weighed above 165 pounds. The simple fact was that his crushing power enabled him to take on bigger men and win. Okay? He had that kind of power. Not only take on bigger men, but beat them. Al Booker in the building. What's up, Al Booker? How are you today? Good to see you. Black boxing pioneers today, talking about the Boston Bone Crusher, Sam Lightfoot. Yeah, his power, he never fought, he averaged like 150, 160, 165. And his power enabled him to not only take on bigger men, but to beat them, okay? To beat them. Incredibly tough and almost never off his feet. Lightfoot knew all the tricks and was a master of feigning, blocking, body punching, and finding unexpected ways to set up the knockout shot. Decades before young Cassius Clay made the practice famous, Sam often successfully predicted the round in which he would end the fight. And one story has Lightfoot offering to touch gloves before the start of an early round, and his mystified opponent asking, "What's going on, Sam? It ain't the last round." And Sam told him, "It is for you, son." And indeed it was. You know how you touch gloves before the last round? Sam went out like middle of the fight and went to touch gloves, and the guy, "It ain't the last round," and said, "Yes, it is too." And it was. It was the last round. I guess that's why Sam was touching gloves with him. There's Sam. A young Sam Lightfoot. Yep. Sam said, "It's the last round for you, son." In 1906, Lightfoot battled Jack Johnson, and the Galveston Giant, who was some 30 pounds heavier, dealt Sam not only a defeat, but as Sam himself put it, "the only real beating I ever took." 2 years later, Johnson was the first black heavyweight champion of the world. But as Lightfoot had grown during the interim in both size and reputation, Johnson had no interest in granting him a title shot. Sadly, this would be a recurring theme in Lightfoot's career, as he was without a doubt the most feared fighter of his time. Probably the most avoided fighter in history was Sam Lightfoot. Okay. BBO Sports TV from the STN in the building. What's up, nephew? BBO on the Sports Talk Network, 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. You see BBO and the gang over there. Prize Fighter, D Free. T Hill's in there with him sometimes. But salute BBO Sports TV. Black boxing pioneer today. We talking about the old master now, Sam Lightfoot. Yeah, he was the most dodged, ducked, avoided fighter, whatever you want to call it in boxing history, was Sam Lightfoot. And the man never fought above like 165, fighting heavyweights and beating them, okay? And beating them. Now, of course, part of why he never received the opportunities he deserved also had to do with his being black. like Harry Wills, Joe Jeanette, and Sam McVeigh. Langford was conveniently avoided by white fighters on the basis of the repugnant color line. The Langford did manage to get into the ring with white champions such as Stanley Ketchel and Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, but never with a title at stake. Okay? Now they had titles, but they wouldn't put them on the line against Sam. Okay? It was stipulated in the contract. This is a non-title affair. In fact, Sam defeated both Ketchel and O'Brien with little difficulty. Ketchel surviving a 6-round battle, O'Brien left moaning in agony on the canvas in 5 rounds. Okay, yeah, beat both of them. But like I say, the title was not on the line when he fought those fighters. He did that a lot back then. You know, put in the contract, this is a non-title fight. Okay. Now, but while Langford never won a world title, those in the fight game knew how good he was. Joe Jeanette and Harry Wills both rated Langford the best they ever fought. Fireman Jim Flynn, who faced off against Jack Johnson, Jack Dempsey, Gunboat Smith, and many others said, the hardest hit I ever faced was Sam Langford. Charlie Rose, old-time fight manager, rated Langford as the best heavyweight of all time. While another well-known manager who saw Langford in action, Dan Morgan, said, Sam would finish Joe Louis in about 6 or 7 rounds, okay? Sports writer Jimmy Cannon quoted Jack Dempsey as saying, Sam probably would have knocked me out. Okay, there you go, T-Mac 149. Yeah, Jack Dempsey admitted he didn't want no part of Sam Langford. Arthur Mac Silver wrote, the Ring Boxing Almanac, he stated that Langford was quite possibly the greatest fighter who ever lived. His every move embodied the technique of a studied master boxer. Trainer Teddy Atlas raced the Boston Terrier as pound for pound the 5th best boxer of all time. He was too good for his own good, like I said earlier, too good for his own good. Now, for Langford, boxing was his vocation, and he competed 30 times or more in a single year, not counting sparring or exhibitions. Eventually, he paid a steep price for this brutal schedule in the form of eye trouble. By the time he was 38 years old, he could see nothing with his left eye. And in 1922, he temporarily lost the sight in his remaining good eye in the midst of his fight with the legendary Tiger Flowers. Now, Sam managed to stay calm and waited for Flowers to come to him, catching him in a performance timed. No, yeah, he went blind and he managed to stay calm and waited for Flowers to come to him, catching him with a perfectly timed, though blindly thrown right hand. The fatal clout was a right that traveled something more than 6 inches, reported the Atlantic Constitution. Afterwards, doctors told Langford if he didn't retire, complete and permanent blindness was a certainty. But Sam was a fighter. What else could he do? Besides, he was broke. He kept fighting, blind. I don't know how he got licenses and stuff. You know? Yep, there's another shot of Sam. Later that same year, he traveled to Mexico. As Sam told it, I went down to Mexico in 1922 with this here left eye completely gone and the right just seeing shadows. It was a cataract. They matched me up with Kid Savage for the title. I was bluffing that I could see, but I gave myself away. They bet awful heavy on the kid when the word got around. I just felt my way, and then wham, I got home. Sam, while almost completely blind, won by a first-round knockout, okay? Incredibly, he would go on to have another 30 fights, winning 23 of them, before finally calling it a career. Blind in one eye, just seeing shadows out of the other one, he had almost like 25 more fights that way. And he had 30 more fights and won 23 of them. Okay? Completely blind in one eye, seeing shadows out of the other. Wow. Incredible. Now, Lightfoot retired when he was 43 years old. By that point, the old gladiator had been boxing for an astonishing 27 years. His final record, as far as that can be documented, and including newspaper decisions, stands at 207 wins, 46 losses, and 57 draws. And remember, just like George Dixon, a lot of those draws were probably wins. Remember, Joe Gans, because of the racism of the era, this one historian said 90% of his draws and losses were really wins. Same thing with Sam Langford. 57 draws, that's a lot of draws. A lot of them were really wins. Decades later, in 1944, sports writer Al Laney went searching for Langford in New York City because he had just disappeared after his career. So the sports writer went looking for him. He found him in a squalid room in Harlem, penniless, blind, and alone. The Laney's subsequent articles rendered Langford a tragic figure, inspiring gifts from the public and the establishment of a charitable fund to aid the old battler. And at boxing cards in New York, they would pass a head around for sale at the fights, and people would put money in it. And after this writer found it, they started sending him money and stuff like that. What they call it page, they didn't have it back then. What is it, a GoFundMe? The page they started, they didn't have them back then. They probably would have started one of them for sale. Okay? Yeah. And there he is with Joe Louis. He had retired and everything there. Completely blind by that time. With the young Joe Louis. Okay, let's finish this off. What's Sam? Then we're going to move to the next guy. But Sam, while grateful for the help, didn't feel the least bit bitter or sorry for himself. He was no pathetic victim of the most brutal of sports. I fought maybe 400 fights, he told Laney, and every one was a pleasure. Needless to say, Sam had experienced his share of hard times and disappointment, but nothing could get him down for long. Even destitute and blind, his spirit was unbroken. Sometime after Laney published his stories on Langford, he visited the old fighter one Christmas Eve. I got a guitar, said Sam, and a bottle of gin, and money in my pocket to buy Christmas dinner. No millionaire in the world got more than that, or anybody. They can't use more. That was Sam Langford, the true ultimate warrior. Greatest fighter, most avoided fighter of all time, and the greatest fighter to never win a championship. The Boston Bone Crusher, Sam Langford. Now we go to the old master, Joe Gans. Just looking at some of the black boxing pioneers today. The old master, Joe Gans. From Baltimore, Maryland, Joe Gans. Mm-hmm. Yep. He died young too. I think he had tuberculosis or something like that. Yeah. But how's everybody this hump day afternoon on Cash Sports the Box Story, looking at these black boxing pioneers. Now we're going to take a look at the old master, Joe Gans. Okay? Is next. Yep, number 3, there's the old master. All right. Born in Baltimore in 1874, the great Joe Gans got his start in boxing the way many black fighters of his time did, in observed exploitative spectacles called battle royals. For these brutal winner-take-all brawls, several young black men would be blindfolded and pushed into the ring at the same time. There were no rules. It was just sheer mayhem as the desperate combatants flared away until finally one man was left standing. More often than not, that man was Gans, who went on to have his first legitimate fight in 1893. And it didn't take long for him to establish a reputation as a fighter to be feared. Okay, it didn't take long for people to find out who the old master was. Okay, didn't take long at all. And then he also became a fighter to be feared. There's the great Joe Gans right there. Okay. Booker says, for the record, Jack Johnson did fight Sam Langford. Not sure if you said Jack Johnson or Jack Jesse, Doctor. Yeah, Jack Johnson did fight him before he got the title. But once he got the title, he never fought him again. Never gave him a second fight. But when I think Jack Johnson might have had the colored heavyweight championship when he fought Sam Langford. But once he got the regular heavyweight championship, he never fought him again. Yeah, they both avoided him, Jack Johnson and Jack Jesse. Yeah. Now, Jack Johnson did beat him, but no, once he got the title, he avoided all black fighters. He did fight one black fighter toward the end of his reign. It was Jim Johnson, who was like D-level. That's the one he picked to fight. He didn't fight Sam Langford or Harry Wills or Joe Jeanette or Sam McVeigh or none of them. He fought Jim Johnson, who was like not C-level, D-level. Okay? Yeah, but he did fight Sam Langford once before, but once he got the heavyweight title, he never fought him again. Okay, now Joe Gans. Intelligence and the sophistication of his ring technique. Oh, now from the beginning, what set Gans apart was his intelligence and the sophistication of his ring technique. Now, while many, if not most pugilists of the time, looked to swarm or brawl, Gans developed a style which capitalized on his exceptional athleticism and quickness. Okay? Yeah. He was one of the first to use the sweet science of the sport, along with George Dixon. Now, Gans delivered blows in a precise and studied manner, with grace and economy of movement. Historians credit him with building upon the shrewd ringcraft of his predecessor, all-time great bantamweight champion George Dixon, aka Little Chocolate, and popularizing the basic techniques in terms of stance, footwork, blocking, and counterpunching, as well as the central importance of the jab. After Gans, all boxers learned these techniques. While he also possessed terrific punching power, Joe's ring smarts and general canniness were so much a part of his success that he earned the moniker the Old Master long before he could be considered old. In fact, he would not live long enough to ever fulfill his famous nickname. Yeah, I think he was in his 30s, like his middle 30s when he died. Called the Old Master, but never really got old. You know? Now, newspaper stories from the time attest to Gans' masterful technique and high reputation. In 1906, the Boston Globe described him as one of the most wonderful fighters from a scientific view that the world has never seen, right? There's not a trick or point that he does not know. The San Francisco Chronicle stated that there never was a fighter who could block with such skill and precision as the Old Master. His contemporaries recognized his brilliance pound for pound great Sam Langford, who defeated Gans under rather exceptional circumstances, declared him the finest boxer who had ever lived. Three-time champion Bob Fitzsimmons regarded him as the cleverest fighter, big or little, that ever put on the gloves. Benny Leonard, who learned to box while Gans was still champion, idolized the old master. His own highly cerebral ring craft strongly influenced by his predecessor, Joe Gans. Okay, the great Benny Leonard. Yeah, Joe Gans was his idol. And there's Joe Gans and Abe Attell. And Abe Attell called him the best lightweight of all time. They were friends. They used to spar together and stuff, him and Abe Attell. And Abe said he was the best lightweight of all time. Yeah, appreciate you, Al Booker. Yes. Al Booker's a historian too, especially on Jack Johnson. You can't let nothing about Jack Johnson ain't gonna get by Al Booker. Appreciate you, Al Booker. Okay, yeah, that's Joe Gans and Abe Attell. Good friends. They used to spar together and stuff. And like I said, Abe Attell called Joe Gans the best lightweight of all time. Now, but despite being highly regarded, Gans did not receive a title shot until 1900, when he fought Frank Aaron for the championship and abruptly quit in the 12th round due to an eye injury. Now, the circumstances of the loss were exploited by some to bolster the repugnant belief of the time that black men lacked the same grit and courage as white fighters. But in fact, Joe asked for the fight to be halted only after his eye had actually been dislodged from the socket. Wow. See, anybody else would have been quit. Now, as reported by several newspapers, a clash of heads caused a severe injury, which made continuing to fight impossible. Okay, he made it to the 12th round. And I don't know what round the clash of heads happened then. Wow, but the eye was dislodged from the socket. Now, later that same year, Gans met brawler Terry McGovern in Chicago and was knocked down 8 times in less than 2 rounds before the fight was stopped. This is when they said it was throw. He threw it. And this fight was so bad, and the during the fight was so obvious, right? The result was greeted with widespread disgust. No one believed it was legitimate. The resulting uproar prompted the city of Chicago to ban boxing, a ban that held for over 2 decades. And Joe Gans later admitted to taking a dive on orders from his manager. Well, he didn't have to admit it. Everybody knew it. He took the dive so bad. Everybody knew it was a fixed fight. Yeah, there it is right here. I think he went down 8 times. That's not it. Here we go. Yeah, here he is on the mat right there. And they banned boxing for 25 years after that. Okay, 25 years. Okay, so now while this constituted one of 2 certified instances where Gans participated in a fix, few doubt that there were numerous occasions which Joe had no chance but to box to orders, right? The ugly truth was that the great champion often entered the ring handcuffed, mandated by gamblers or his manager to carry an opponent a certain number of rounds, or even to lose the fight, right? Lightweight champion Willie Ritchie, who knew Joe, states in the interview that Gans had to do as he was told by the white managers. They were crooks. They framed fights. And being a Negro, the poor guy had to follow orders. Otherwise, he'd have starved to death. He wouldn't have got fights, right? Meanwhile, in fights that were on the level, Gans had to endure all kinds of unfair treatment, such as making weight just minutes before the fight, or while wearing his boxing gear, not to mention being flagrantly fouled. And when the fighting was done, even when he was the winner, he often watched his white opponents walk away with the lion's share of the cash. Yeah, that was the early 1900s, though, so you know. There's him and Peter Jackson, another of the black pioneers. We're going to talk about him too, if time permitting. I got 10 of them, but I don't think we're going to get to all of them. Okay. Now, a year after the defeat to Earn, Gans secured a rematch, and this time flattened the champion in one round to finally win the title. Yeah, this fight was on the up and up. You know, when he threw before, then on the up and up fight, he beat him in the first round, knocked him out. And the victory made Gans the first American-born Negro to hold a world title belt in any sport, American-born. Now, George Dixon was the first black person overall, but he was Canadian, okay? In racism, you find both the rest of Gans' career and his life. He defended his championship regularly, and in 1904 defeated James Edward Britt by disqualification after being punched while he was down. Britt, a white man, then claimed to be the rightful champion, despite the disqualification, and had Britt claimed he was the champion, despite the disqualification, right? And they had the backing of many for no reason other than bigotry. When Britt then lost to Battling Nelson, it set up a showdown that the sporting public clamored for, Nelson versus Gans, for the undisputed championship. The resulting duel, held in Nevada in September 1906, proved historic for boxing, while tragic for Gans. Yeah. There was a hype in the fight between him and Battling Nelson right there. Who do you like? Now, the terms of the fight were horribly unfair to Joe, especially when one considers that he, not Nelson, was the rightful title holder. Not only did he have to cede most of the purse money to his white opponent, but Nelson insisted Gans make weight 3 separate times prior to the fight, each time while wearing his boxing gear. The last just hours before the fight. This was to be one of the last fights to the finish fights in boxing history, and it was a grueling war, though largely one-sided. Nelson was outclassed for the most part, and Gans scored several knockdowns. Finally, in round 42, Nelson reached his limit and intentionally struck Gans below the belt to get disqualified. And that was a fight, 42-round fight, and that was the fight where Joe Gans broke his arm in the 34th round and fought the last 8 rounds with a broken arm, okay? That was that fight. But he did win it. You know, Nelson got tired and got disqualified, okay? Yeah, that's him and Nelson there during the fight, okay? Now, following this win, Gans was never the same. The strain of the constant dehydration to make weight, plus the epic battle in the Nevada heat, took their toll. And soon after, he contracted tuberculosis. Amazingly, he would continue boxing for another 2 years, even meeting Battling Nelson twice more, however, losing both times. But it was obvious to all this was not the same Gans, with reporters remarking on the dull eyes and the gray skin. The San Francisco Chronicle even noted him shivering from fever in the 3rd round of the fight, one of the fights with Nelson. And by the summer of 1910, more than a year after his last fight, it was obvious he was dying. And he embarked on a long train ride back east to his mother in Baltimore before it was too late. Now, word spread, and soon hundreds of people were gathered at the train stops along the way to pay their respects. He died in his mother's arms at the age of 35. Wow. In his home city of Baltimore, Maryland, where thousands attended the funeral of the old master, Joe Gans. There he is. The old master. No, that ain't him. Oh, come on, man. Get with me for a moment. I don't know what I did. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it. It is the old master. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. And yeah, he went back home and died in his mother's arms. Now, Joe Gans' final record, including newspaper decisions, stands at an astonishing 159 wins, 12 losses, and 20 draws, with many, if not most, of the draws and losses being fights he actually won or intentionally forfeited through them, just like, a lot of losses and draws were wins, just like George Dixon and Sam Langford, or Joe Gans threw them. He deserves to be remembered as one of the finest boxers of all time, regardless of weight, and arguably the best lightweight ever. More than one boxing reporter from Gans' era pegged him as the greatest fighter who had ever lived, at any weight. Ned Fleischer, founder of Ring Magazine, rated Gans the all-time best lightweight, while historian Charlie Rose ranked him second only to Benny Leonard. Eminent boxing historian Monty D. Cox regards Gans as the greatest lightweight ever. And in terms of the best boxers of all time, pound for pound, second only to the great Sugar Ray Robinson. And there you have it, the old master, Joe Gans. Okay, now we're gonna move on. We got 10 of these boxing pioneers, black boxing pioneers. We're not gonna get to all of them. Sam McVeigh is next. This is a short one here. Sam McVeigh is next. Okay, let's get to Sam McVeigh. Okay. Yeah. There's Sam right there. Big Sam McVeigh. Okay. Get that going for you. Happy Wednesday to everyone. It is Wednesday, right? Yeah. This is only the fourth one. Wow. And we're moving on up into the show. Just Do Boxing up next. That's what I'm warming you up for. Of course, that balanced, unbiased boxing talk. Everybody gets to Just Do. Like I said, even Ryan Garcia and Teofimo Lopez get their Just Do over there. Just Do. Even them class. Just Do. Give everybody their Just Do. Give me for one moment. Please. It's going to be a couple seconds. I'm going to put this back on the charge. 5 minutes from now, I'll put it on the charge. It'll be at 0. Okay, let's go. Sam McVeigh, another one of the black pioneers. There's Sam right there on the screen. Yeah, that's Big Sam McVeigh. Okay. All right. Sam McVeigh, black boxing pioneer. He was born May 17th in 1884, died December 23rd, 1921. Okay. That's 43 years old. He was a Hall of Fame heavyweight boxer who fought during the early 20th century. Now, McVeigh ranked alongside Jack Johnson, Joe Jeanette, Sam Langford, and Harry Wills as the top black heavyweights of their generation. All of them, except Johnson, were denied a shot at the World Heavyweight Championship due to the color bar, which ironically was maintained by Johnson when he became the first black fighter to win the heavyweight title. Now, despite being denied a title shot, McVeigh enjoyed a famed career that took him across the globe. In 96 documented fights in at least 10 different countries, McVeigh only lost 16 fights. His greatest wins include 2 wins over both Sam Langford and Harry Wills, which won in the World Colored Heavyweight Championship on 2 occasions, respectively. Okay. He won the World Colored Championship on 2 different occasions. He did. In his later years, he worked as a trainer and sparring partner for both black and white fighters, training for important fights. Fighting out of Oxnard, California, McVeigh stood 5'10.5" inches tall and fought at a weight of between 205 and 220 pounds. He relied more on brute strength than finesse in the ring. His first pro fight listed on BoxRec took place in 1902 at the age of 18, but a newspaper from 1902 on his then upcoming fight with Jack Fogarty lists 5 earlier fights he won in Australia and a further 2 that took place in California. Okay? However, in those days, few mixed race fights took place, so McVeigh frequently fought the other top black boxers of his time, including Sam Langford. 15 times he fought Sam Langford, fought Joe Jeanette 5 times, and he fought Harry Wills 5 times. He fought Jack Johnson 3 times. Overall, McVeigh's boxing record was 65 wins, 16 losses, and 12 draws. McVeigh spent much of his prime years fighting overseas. He left for Paris in 1907 and fought there for 4 years. McVeigh left Paris in 1911 for Australia. He fought there for 3 more years before finally returning to the United States on December 31st, 1908. In 1908, in Paris, he competed in a mixed style fight against jiu-jitsu expert Tano Matsuda, knocking him out in 10 seconds. 10 seconds of the first round. Now, in the earlier part of the 20th century, such fights were occasionally held in Japan, pitting Western boxers against judo or jiu-jitsu fighters. On April 17, 1909 in Paris, Sam McVeigh fought Joe Jeanette in a fight considered one of the greatest and certainly one of the longest of the 20th century. The fight went 50 rounds. I think it was actually 49, but anyway, 49 or 50 rounds and lasted 3.5 hours. McVeigh was generally agreed to be winning through most of the fight, particularly the 21st and 22nd round, knocking Jeanette down repeatedly. By the 40th round, however, Jeanette had recovered while McVeigh was lagging and knocked down repeatedly. Ultimately, McVeigh's eyes had swollen shut and he was forced to quit. Sam McVeigh, okay? Next is Harry Wills, the Black Panther. Harry Wills, okay? Yeah, they called him the Black Panther. He was like the #1 contender for like 20 years or something, but never got his title shot. We're going to talk about the situation between him and Jack Dempsey. Okay? Yeah. We're going to talk about the situation because Jack Dempsey wanted to fight him, but the government stopped the fight because, like in the opening, I told you, when Jack Johnson beat James Jeffries, they had race riots all over the country. 20 people lost their life. So the government ordered the promoters of the time not to make any more mixed race heavyweight championship fights because they didn't want those riots to break out. That had happened, after the Johnson and Jeffries fight. So the next man after that, the next man that, like I said, the next man that fought for a world, next black heavyweight that fought for a world title was Joe Louis in 1937. All those years, like 30-something years later. Yeah, Joe Louis was the next one to get a shot after that. Yeah. Yup. So yeah, we're gonna talk about this situation between Wills and Jack Dempsey. Now, the Black Panther, that's what they called Harry Wills. He was the number one contender for a lot of years, but never got a shot. And Jack Dempsey wanted to fight him. They actually had it scheduled a couple times too, I believe, but it never happened. Yes, called the Black Panther and the Phantom title fight. Phantom title fight that never happened. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Because Jack Dempsey not exactly sound like a person that would abduct somebody. This is a guy, he was a teenager, he was homeless, and he would go in the bar and challenge anybody in there to fight for money just to eat. That don't sound like somebody that's going to duck anybody. To me, you're a teenage kid. You go in there fighting the biggest person in there just to get some money to eat. Right? That don't sound like somebody that's duck the smoke, any smoke. Yeah, but let's talk about this fight between him and the Black Panther, Harry Wills. The Phantom title fight. Phantom because, it never happened. They talked about it a few times, but, and the promoters wanted to make it, but, the government wouldn't let them. Okay, yeah. Now let's get Harry up there. There's Harry. There's Harry right there. Now back during that awful time, for 5 long years, it seemed Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao would never, ever meet in the ring. Pundits and historians mused as it was that a Maypac might be the biggest potential fight in boxing history to never materialize. Now, of course, it did materialize, as in many of us wished it had not. But in truth, if it hadn't, it still would have simply joined the long list of great fights that failed to take place. For example, what might have happened had the iconic heavyweight champion Jack Dempsey and long-standing top contender Harry Wills ever clashed? We will never know. Okay? We will never know. Dempsey versus Wills will forever be the heavyweight super fight that never was. Okay? The fight that never was. Now, safe to assume it would have been one hell of a battle. Yet Dempsey was almost martyred in his inactivity. After winning the title by beating the tar out of Jess Willard in 1919, he competed just 5 times through the next 5 years. And, that's normal nowadays, fight 5 times in 5 years. But back then, 5 years, the average fighter fought like 5 years, maybe 30 times, right? Or more. Harry Wills fought 37 times in 1917, 45 in 1919. So 5 times in 5 years back then was very rare. It's normal now, And to put that into perspective, it is I'm not going to put that into perspective. You're going to move on. But there's Jack Dempsey right there. Now, what Dempsey lacked in a full schedule, however, he made up for in ferocity and raw talent. Well, here was a new kind of fighter, a vicious ring assassin who set a savage pace, advancing relentlessly in his awkward crouch, which in fact made him deceptively hard to hit. Dempsey may not have been invincible like Jack Johnson before him. Dempsey tasted defeat before winning the heavyweight crown, but he was a legitimate ring great with a wealth of hard-earned experience to support his high reputation. For example, after powerful Louis Firpo punched him out of the ring in the opening round of their savage brawl, Dempsey came back and knocked Firpo down and out the following round. Knocked him down like 9 times, okay? He was a force to be reckoned with, no doubt. Yeah, Jack Dempsey was. No doubt. Force to be reckoned with. Enter one Harry Wills, a Louisiana native, known as the Black Panther, a man with a rectangular frame. Wills kicked around the heavyweight division for years, hoping to get his chance at the world title. He fought the great Sam Langford on many occasions, like 15 times, and had also gotten the better of men who had likewise faced Dempsey, including the dangerous Firpo. Okay, Wills fought Firpo and got the better of him. And it's worth noting that while Dempsey had to recover from a knockdown against the wall bull of the Panthers, Firpo, Wills defeated the Argentinian with relative ease just a year later. Okay? Yeah, there's Wills and Firpo right there. Okay? Yeah, Wills defeated him with ease. They had no problem with him. 1924. Okay. But there was a major stumbling block in this worthy challenger, meeting Dempsey in the ring. That being the simple fact that Wills happened to be black. And from our particular vantage point in history, where people actually excuse me for 1 minute. Okay, there it is. I had to move something. I'm sorry. And where was it? Okay, here we go. Yeah, from our particular vantage point in history, where people actually make sport of pretending to be offended by the innocuous, it's hard to imagine blatant and public prejudice being tolerated. Yet the racism of that day was very real. But ironically enough, Wills became so renowned and respected that even white America took a shine to him. Eventually, people, including those in the media, started asking aloud, what was so wrong about giving a deserving challenger a crack at the heavyweight crown? Right? People started to like Wills and started wondering, why come this man ain't getting his shot? In truth, Dempsey himself appeared willing to take Wills on, and for a whole lot of money too. Now, those who argue that the Manasseh Mauler drew the color line might be interested to know he did in fact sign a contract to meet Wills, and that he had fought black opponents before. Yeah, Jack Dempsey did not draw the color line. But the fight with Wills, however, was simply not meant to be. The closest it may have come to actually occurring was in 1925. An agreement was reached with Wills getting $50,000, a sizable purse at the time. But Dempsey's much larger payment never came through, and thus neither did one of the most anticipated fights in history. Yeah. And there's Wills and Langford battling right there. All right, Wills and Sam Langford battling. Yeah, but the Wills Dempsey match never happened. Wills and the great Sam Langford battling it out. Okay. So instead, Dempsey fought and lost to Gene Tunney twice. The second time in insanely controversial fashion. While Wills went on to close out his career without a world title shot. To be sure, the Phantom title fight, Dempsey versus Wills, serves as a warning as to what happens when outside pressure and interest interfere with competition. Could Wills have bested Dempsey? It's a good question. Had the two met in 1925 and 1926, which was the time when the fight came closest to happening, Wills likely had a real chance. Then again, to be sure, matters like this make for uncomfortable discussions. Okay? It's not fun contemplating the widespread racism of the past, but it's also difficult to grasp that things are not always as black and white as they may at first appear. The truth is, a number of factors prevented the Wills versus Dempsey fight from taking place. One of them being Jack Johnson, the Galveston Giant, famed for his arrogant ways and his openly consorting with white women, so outraged white America during his turbulent reign that he virtually guaranteed that no title shot would be given to a black man for many years after. Yeah, they looked at the way Jack Johnson, which was nothing wrong with it, but white America looked at the way Jack Johnson flaunted his title and everything, and they said, no, we're not letting another black man get nowhere near that title, right? Yeah, that was really one of the reasons. Jack Johnson. Yeah, but he was just being himself. Here's a little tale of the tape with Wills and Johnson from 1925. Additionally, Wills likely hurt his cause. Now Wills hurt his own cause too. Listen to this. Wills likely hurt his own cause by refusing to face Gene Tunney in a lucrative title eliminator that could have put even more pressure on those who could have made the fight happen. Reportedly, Tunney was open to the fight, but Wills turned it down. I don't know why. In the end, one thing is clear. Both Wills and Dempsey were willing to face off in the ring. It's easy to cast Dempsey as the villain here and think it was all too easy for him to avoid the fight. But the evidence, including his signature, proves otherwise. Yeah, I don't know why Wills didn't take the Tunney fight, because if he had fought and beat Tunney, it would have been very hard to refuse them letting him fight Dempsey, because when Wills turned down the Tunney fight, guess who Tunney got to fight? Dempsey. So just think if Wills would have beat Tunney, it would have been extremely hard to deny him the Dempsey fight then. And he would have made a whole lot of money. I don't know why he turned down the Tunney fight. Maybe, I don't know, was he scared? I don't know why he turned down the Tunney fight. That would have probably led directly to a title shot. He made his biggest mistake right there. Because like I said, when Wills turned down the Tunney fight, Tunney got the Dempsey fight. So you have to imagine the winner, if Wills would have fought Tunney, the winner would have got Dempsey. That could have been Wills. So he made a huge mistake there. Now, years later, Dempsey told interviewer Peter Heller that the real obstacle was finding a venue. Presumably, there was simply so much widespread objection on the part of the people who had the means to stage the fight. Right? It was hard to find a venue too. They wouldn't let you fight no place, Dempsey told Heller in 1970. Tex Rickard wanted to make the fight, but there was no place that you could put it on. I wanted to fight him, but they wouldn't let you fight no place. It is Dempsey and Tunney. That was the fight right after when Dempsey is down. No, that's Dempsey and that's Dempsey and Tunney. But yeah, right after Tunney Wills turned down the Tunney fight, Tunney got the Dempsey fight. So Wills made a huge mistake there in not taking that fight. Yes. That could have led directly to a title shot. I don't know why he turned that down. That would have been a no-brainer. And it was a title eliminator. Now, it's hard not to feel bad for Wills in all this. While Dempsey went on to iconic status, the Black Panther, despite his being an all-time great, is now largely forgotten. Though perhaps that was always meant to be the case. Perhaps Dempsey would indeed have prevailed had the two met in the ring. The fact we will never know is a blemish on the history of the sport. One brief side note. Wills reportedly ended up being quite well for him he ended up doing quite well for himself post-boxing in the real estate business. The man always regretted, however, the fact that he never got to fight with Dempsey. Yep. And in that, he was not and still isn't alone. I would always like to know why he didn't fight Tunney, though, in that title eliminator. I think it might have been his biggest payday and everything. You know, I'm gonna have to do some research and try. I've never been able to find that out. Why he did not take that fight with Gene Tunney. It was a title eliminator. It probably would have led straight to a title shot, but he turned it down. Okay, let's do one more. Joe Jeanette. We got to do 6 of them. The great Joe Jeanette. This is going to be the last one. It's going to be time for Just Do Boxing. And everybody going to fly out of here over to Just Do Boxing. And I ain't mad because guess what? I'm going over there too. Okay, Joe Jeanette. This is a little short one. This is going to be it. Okay. Let's see. There's Joe. And that right there. Arnie Boxing, salute. Yeah, just talking about some Black pioneers today, Arnie. We had 10 of them, but we got to do 6. Joe Jeanette is the 6th and probably be the final one. Yeah. Yeah, I was writing down Arnie Boxing. I was writing Joe Jeanette. But salute Arnie Boxing. How are you today? Okay, let's talk about Joe Jeanette real quick. Then we're going to be time to get out of here. Let's see. Joe Jeanette, okay. Yeah, let's talk about Joe right quick. Now, he was never given a crack at the heavyweight world title. You know, and ran at the wrong time. Jeremiah Joe Jeanette, right? He was born in North Bergen, New Jersey, August 26, 1879. And he fought as a heavyweight, competed from 1904 to 1922. He had an 18-year career, okay? He was considered one of the best heavyweights in his era, but because he was an African-American, he was never given a crack at the World Heavyweight Championship, okay? Now, he was a well-built athlete and did win the World Colored Heavyweight title, but was unfortunate to be around at the same time when Sam Langford and Jack Johnson were in their prime. Now, among other great fighters around at the time were Harry Wills, Sam McVeigh, Barbados Joe Walcott, and the old master Joe Yans, some of whom we talked about earlier. Now, the fighters would take on anyone, but mostly they fought among each other because they were too good for most other fighters out there. Now, Jeanette had his first pro fight in September 1904 against Arthur Dixon and won on a knockout, according to Ned Fleischer, the founder of Ring Magazine. Okay. However, BoxRec had his first fight listed as against Morris Harris in a no decision fight, as the law would not allow decisions to be rendered at that time. The black fighters were obliged to fight each other most of the time because of the so-called color bar. Now, in his first fight with Jack Johnson on May 9th, 1905, Jeanette lost on a 3-round newspaper decision after he was dropped 3 times in the first round. Okay, you remember the newspaper decision is when there was no decision back then. If the only way you got to win, one fighter had to give up or get knocked out. And if then the fight went a certain period of time, and then both fighters said, "Well, that's it," there was no decision, and then the newspaper would print a decision the next day. That's the newspaper decision. Okay, no judges or round limits. It just got to where both fighters kept towing the mark, then they both just agreed, that's it, that's the end. So no judges or nothing. It would print a decision in the newspaper. No decision. The newspaper decision, right? Now, Ned Fleischer, founder of Ring Magazine, also wrote, Jack Johnson often remarked to me that the man who gave him one of his toughest fights was Joe Jeanette, who was then only a novice, while Jack Johnson already had made his mark in the sport and was being discussed as a possible opponent for the world heavyweight champion, Jim Jeffries. Now, Jeanette had 8 fights with Johnson, 13 with Sam Langford, and 4 with Sam McVeigh. There was always bad blood between Johnson and Jeanette because Jeanette felt that when Johnson became the official world heavyweight champion, he ignored his friends and drew the color bar against his own people. Yeah, Joe Jeanette always said that. Jack forgot his friends when he won the official heavyweight title. Yeah. Okay, so Jeanette said, Langford was the greatest fighter that ever lived. It would have had the better of Johnson at any time, and Johnson knew that. And don't forget that Langford only weighed about 160 pounds. Yeah, Joe was just hating on Jack Johnson because he didn't like Jack Johnson, so naturally gonna say Sam Langford would beat him. But they actually fought, and Jack Johnson beat Sam. Sam Langford said that's the only time he actually got beat up in a fight, was the one against Jack Johnson, before Jack Johnson became the official heavyweight champion, though. Now, April 17th, 1909, Jeanette beat Sam McVeigh in a 49. See, when we was talking about the Sam McVeigh article, it had 50 rounds, but I thought it was 49, but this one says 49. Remember, we just did Sam McVeigh, it said 50, but it was 49. April 17th, 1909, this fight was in Paris. He beat Sam McVeigh in a 49-round retirement fight to the finish that lasted 3 hours and a half. Wow. For the world colored heavyweight title. And Jeanette finished his career with a record of 83 wins, 9 losses, 9 draws, 69 by knockout, right? Wow. 92, 101. And probably had more because record keeping wasn't that good back then. Officially 101, right? 89 and 9 is 92 and 9. 83 and 9 is 92 and 9 more is 101. Officially 101, but probably had many more because and then they don't put the newspaper decisions on you. So with newspaper decisions and the records not being too good, he might have had 300 or 400 fights. But there have been reports. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Officially 101, but there have been reports that he had in the area of 400 fights. Officially. And several fights. A lot of fights went unrecorded in those days. Mm-hmm. And of course, the newspaper decisions wasn't put on your official record. After retiring from the ring, Jeanette bought a building in Union City, New Jersey, which became known as Jeanette's Auto Service. And he also set up a gym on the 2nd floor of the building. And Jeanette died in 1958 and is buried in Fairview, New Jersey. And he was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in the inaugural year of 1990. Joe Jeanette. And there you have it. we had like 4 more, but we didn't get to them. Maybe another day when we like have a little time at the end. We had Barbados, Joe Walcott. I was doing them in order of when they fought the deal. Jack Johnson, Barbados, Joe Walcott, Jack Johnson, Peter Jackson, and Bill Richmond and Tom Mulliner. Well, Bill Richmond and Tom Mulliner was way before. They were actually slaves that ended up being boxers. Tom Mulliner, you know, during slavery, they would put the fighters, you know, the black slaves would box, and they would travel around the different plantations, and the masters and people from the town would come around and watch these fights and bet on the slaves. And a slave could actually win his freedom from boxing if he made his master enough money. They would be granted their freedom, and that's how Tom Mulliner got free. He made his master and his son so much money, he earned his freedom, right? And ended up becoming a bare knuckles boxer. Yeah, Tom Mulliner and Bill Richmond were both in the bare knuckles era. Yeah, ended up becoming a famous bare knuckles boxer. He made his most of his fights were in England, Great Britain. So was Bill Richmond. Yeah. And he fought the great English champion Tom Cribb. One fight, he was beating Cribb, and the people in the audience thought this black man was going to beat their champion. So they jumped in there and helped the champion out. And it stood. You know, Cribb got the win. Yeah. They would do that back then in the 1800s. You bet on a Friday he loses, and you could jump in there and help him out. Mm-hmm. Make sure you ain't lose your money. Yeah. Yeah. But there you have it. The Black Boxing Pioneers today. Hope everybody enjoyed that. This hump day, we're halfway through the week. We'll be back tomorrow with another one. Just Do Boxing is coming up next in these YouTube streets. And we'll see y'all over there. Like I said, everybody gonna run out of here at 4 o'clock, but I'm running out too. Over to Just Do Boxing. Okay. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. What's going on this weekend in the ring? Let's see real quick. We got like 7 minutes. Let's see what's happening on the boxing schedule. But salute Define Arnie. Just started his channel coming on in nights 9, 10, somewhere around in there. You might catch it. Yeah. Right for right now. Okay. Find podcast. Okay. Let's see what's happening on the boxing schedule though. Let's see. What is this? 16, 17, 18. Saturday is the 18th, right? See what's going on this weekend. Getting close to that big, well, we got some Friday. The Zone. Kieron Conway versus George Dixon. George started. I was just talking about George Dixon in this show. George Goddard. That's 12 rounds. This is for the British Middleweight Championship held by Conway. Okay. Got a card on the Zone Friday. Mm-hmm. And then Saturday from Brooklyn, New York. Danny Garcia, okay. Yeah. Danny's making his return after about what? I done lost track since the last time. Was Earl Danny's last fight? Anybody? But he's making his return Saturday. Danny Garcia, wow. Yeah, Danny been out for a minute. Let's check that before we go. Danny Garcia box right. I think it was Earl. His last fight. Let's check that real quick. We gotta know. Here it is, Danny Garcia box rack. Danny is right now 17-4. 37-4. I can say Danny got more than 21 fights. 37-4. 21 knockouts. Okay, yeah, Danny's last fight was Earl. Yeah. No. Erslandy Lara. He had 2 fights since Earl. Jose Benavidez and Erslandy Lara. Danny didn't fight no September last year, did he? Oh yeah, he did fight Lara. That's right. I forgot about that one. So yeah, Daddy fought since Earl. So he ain't been out that long. And he'll be back in there Saturday, making his return. Danny Garcia. And that's on oh come on, man. Danny Garcia pay-per-view. Are they out of their minds? That ain't no damn man. Danny Garcia and Daniel Gonzalez pay-per-view. They got to be crazy, man. They have to be crazy. Yep. Nah, no way, man. But it says pay-per-view. They just getting desperate nowadays. They make anything pay-per-view nowadays. Wow. Oh, it's farewell fight already boxing? Still ain't no pay-per-view, man. Wow. The man only fought twice in the last 15 years. So yeah. But yeah, he fought Lara last year. Okay. I forgot about that. Yeah. And let's see. What else we got? That is a big card though. And then we got another one on the zone Saturday from Texas. Suarez versus Neri. Oh, that's the women. Jessica Neri Platter, yeah, okay. Flyweight title. Okay, yeah, that's from Texas. Yeah. Got a couple women on that one. Wow. And a whole bunch of women on that one. Okay, but that's this weekend. We got a card Friday, and we got 2 Saturday. And then, of course, Nate's wing up, of course, is Joseph Parker back in there. Fabio Wardley. Joseph makes his return. That's Nate's weekend. Yeah. We're working our way on up to the big card in November. Benavidez, Yard, Devin, and Norman. Working our way on toward that. That's the big one everybody waiting for. And of course, Jake Paul and Tank is in November. But yeah, the big one is what is that one anyway? Let me see. That'll be the last thing. What is that one with Benavidez and all of them? Oh man, I must have missed it. I didn't see it. That's in the, did they cancel it? Okay, yeah. That's November 22nd, deep in the month. Man, I think that's the week of Thanksgiving. Wow. Almost the last Saturday in the month we gotta wait till. But okay, I appreciate everybody. We got Arnie Boxing. Look out for him coming on in the nighttime, around 10, something like that. BBO Sports TV will be tonight at 8 p.m. BBO Sports TV in the game. Al Booger, Just Do Boxing will be in a couple minutes. Mike Mazik, T-Mac 149, The Drunk Irishman. Also another great channel. Look out for The Drunk Irishman. Mike Rem and Miss Cass. Appreciate everybody for coming through today. We will be back tomorrow with another one. Because if it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all of that boxing history. Everybody have a great afternoon. Just Do Boxing straight ahead. I am Cass Sports. See y'all. Thomas Hill. What's up, T Hill?